He pressed the barrel of the gun against the old man's temple so hard the skin turned white around the steel. "Tell me which room he's in," the gunman snarled, yanking the elderly patient by the collar of his hospital gown, dragging him half off the gurney while the man's IV line ripped free and blood ran down his arm. "Tell me right now or I will pull this trigger in front of every single person in this room." The emergency room went absolutely still. Monitors beeped. Somewhere a child whimpered. 43 people stood, frozen nurses, doctors, orderlies, patients in various states of undress and injury, all of them holding their breath, all of them staring at the gun, and all of them waiting for someone to do something. No one moved. No one spoke. Until she did. If this story already has your heart pounding, you are exactly where you need to be. Subscribe to our channel right now, hit that notification bell, and drop a comment telling us what city you are watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Now let us get into it. Her name was Maya Vansarin, and for 43 days she had been the least remarkable person in Houston Metropolitan Trauma Center. That was entirely by design. She came in early, left late, took notes in a small green notebook she kept in her left breast pocket, asked questions only when necessary, and made herself as easy to overlook as a coat hook on a wall. Her colleagues had noticed her the way you notice furniture. Present, functional, unremarkable. One of the senior nurses, a broad-shouldered woman named Dolores Pittman, who had worked trauma for 19 years and had opinions about everything, had taken one look at Maya during orientation and dubbed her the Mouse. The name stuck. Not maliciously, just accurately as far as anyone could tell. Maya Vansarin was quiet. She was careful. She moved through the ER with small, deliberate steps, never bumping into anyone, never raising her voice, never drawing attention. She ate lunch alone in the break room with a paperback she never seemed to make much progress in. She smiled when smiled at. She said thank you and excuse me, and I will get that for you. She did her job with a thoroughness that impressed the attending physicians, even as her personality failed to make any particular impression on them. Nobody knew anything about her before Houston Metropolitan. Her paperwork was clean, her references checked out, her nursing certification was valid and current. She had listed her prior experience as clinical work in a private facility. She had not listed anything else. That Tuesday night started as most Tuesday nights did in the ER. There was a man with a nail through his hand who kept insisting it did not hurt that much, while clearly lying about that. There were two teenagers from a fender bender on the highway scared and texting their parents simultaneously. There was an elderly woman named Mrs. Abernathy who came in every few weeks with chest tightness that always turned out to be anxiety and who Maya had already learned to greet by name and bring peppermint tea to while the workup processed. There was the low roar of the ventilation system, the rhythm of call-outs across the floor, the particular smell of antiseptic and bad coffee that Maya had started to think of, without irony, as home. She was updating a chart at the nursing station when the ambulance bay doors blew open. Not opened, blew open, both panels at once with a force that sent papers scattering off the desk nearest the entrance and made 3 people jump back from reflex. The paramedics were moving fast, faster than the standard push, and the man on the gurney between them was not moving at all. He was large, somewhere in his 60s, with iron gray hair and a jaw like a piece of cut granite. His shirt had been cut open. There were 2 gunshot wounds, one in the left shoulder, one lower near the ribs, and the paramedic at his head was calling out vitals in a voice pitched just below panic. GSW times 2 BPPs dropping tacky at 1:30. We lost him for about 8 seconds in the rig and got him back. He's been in and out. Dr. Anita Reyes, the attending on duty, was already moving. Trauma Bay 2, let's go. Maya stepped aside to let them pass. She watched the gurney roll by. She looked at the man's face for exactly 1 second longer than she needed to. Then she looked at the 2 men who had come through the ambulance doors behind the paramedics. They were not paramedics. They were not police. They wore civilian clothes, unremarkable, dark jackets, dark pants, the kind of clothes that were designed to not be remembered. But they moved wrong. They moved the way people move when they have been trained to clear a room, without appearing to clear a room. Eyes tracking angles, weight forward on the balls of their feet, hands loose at their sides in a way that was not relaxed, but was the practiced simulation of relaxed. Maya looked at them for exactly 1 second. Then she went back to her chart. Her pulse had gone up by perhaps 4 beats per minute. She noted it the way you note weather through a window. Information. Filed. The ER resumed its rhythm. The nail through the hand man was asking if he could have more of whatever they had given him, because it was actually starting to work pretty well now. The teenagers had located their parents by phone, and the volume of that particular corner of the waiting room had increased accordingly. Mrs. Abernathy was asking Maya if the tea could be a little hotter next time, just slightly, because lukewarm tea was really not much better than no tea at all. And Maya said, of course, Mrs. Abernathy absolutely and meant it. The 2 men in dark jackets had positioned themselves on opposite sides of the waiting area. Maya knew exactly where both of them were at all times. She was not watching them. She was not being obvious about anything. She was doing her job, moving from station to station, checking in with the intake desk, verifying medication orders, helping a confused elderly man find the bathroom he had been looking for 10 minutes. But the awareness was there underneath everything, constant and automatic, the way breathing is constant and automatic. She did not have to think about it. It simply happened. 15 minutes after the man with the gunshot wounds was wheeled into trauma bay 2, a third man walked through the main ER entrance. He was older than the other 2. He had the kind of stillness that comes not from calm, but from absolute certainty about what he is about to do. He scanned the room once, located the hallway that led toward the trauma bays, and started walking toward it with the unhurried confidence of someone who has already decided how this ends. He was passing the row of waiting room chairs when Mr. Gerald Okafor, 81 years old, hard of hearing, in for a follow-up on a hip that had been bothering him since February, rolled his transport wheelchair directly into the man's path. The man grabbed the handles of the wheelchair. He stopped Mr. Okafor as if he were stopping a shopping cart. He reached into his jacket with his free hand and produced a gun, and he pressed it against Mr. Okafor's temple, and the emergency room stopped breathing. "Nobody moves," he said, not loudly. He did not need to be loud. "I need to know which room they took the man who just came in. Gunshot wounds. Tell me which room, and the old man goes home tonight." The charge nurse at the front desk, a young man named Patel, who was 3 years out of nursing school and had never had a gun pointed at anyone in his vicinity before, made a sound that was not quite a word. One of the 2 men in dark jackets near the wall had his hand inside his jacket now. Dr. Reyes was somewhere in trauma bay 2. She did not know what was happening out here. Maya was standing at the medication cart 12 feet from the man with the gun, with a syringe in her hand that she had been about to use to update a morphine bag. She set the syringe down on the cart. She set it down quietly, without any sudden movement, without drawing attention to the motion. She straightened up. She looked at Mr. Okafor's face. He was terrified in the specific, bewildered way of someone who has not yet been able to make his mind accept what is happening to his body. His hands were gripping the armrests of his wheelchair with everything he had. His mouth was moving, but no sound was coming out. She looked at the gunman's hands. Right hand on the weapon grip, controlled finger indexed along the frame and not yet on the trigger. That told her something. Left hand on the wheelchair handle, knuckles not quite white, which told her something else. She looked at his feet, shoulder width apart, weight slightly back. She looked at the angle of his jaw, the direction of his eyes, the micro-tension in his neck. She had looked at him for less than 3 seconds total. "Let him go," she said. Her voice came out the way it always came out when it mattered. Not loud, not soft. Level and absolute, the voice of someone who has given orders in places where the cost of not being obeyed was measured in human lives. Every head in the room turned toward her. The gunman turned toward her. He looked at her the way people always looked at her the first time they heard that voice come out of that face, like he had misheard, like the words had come from somewhere else, and he was trying to locate the actual source. "Excuse me," he said. "I said let him go." Maya took one step forward, just one, measured. He's 81 years old, and he has a hip replacement that has been giving him trouble since February. He doesn't know anything about your patient. He's not going to tell you anything useful because he doesn't know anything useful. You're wasting time. Something shifted in the room. It was not visible, it was felt. The particular shift in atmosphere that happens when someone changes the rules of a situation without asking permission. The gunman stared at her. "You need to back up and mind your..." "My name is Maya Van Saren. I'm a nurse here. I've been at this hospital for 43 days. I know every room in this building, every hallway, every exit. I know exactly where your man is." She held his gaze without blinking. "But I'm not going to tell you anything while you have a gun to that man's head. So make a decision, because every second you spend right here is a second you're not where you need to be." Patel, behind the front desk, had not moved since the gun came out. He was staring at Maya with an expression that was somewhere between awe and horror. The man in the dark jacket near the east wall had shifted his weight. Maya caught the movement in her peripheral vision without looking at him. She filed it. She kept her eyes on the gunman with the gun to Mr. Okafor's head. "You're a nurse," the gunman said, flatly, like he was testing the word. "That's what I said." "Then you're going to take me to that room right now, or I'm going to—" "No." She said it cleanly, no qualifier, no apology for it. "That's not how this works. Let the man go. Then we'll talk about where you need to be." The gunman moved. He pulled the wheelchair back and stepped forward, away from Mr. Okafor toward Maya, which was what she had calculated he would do. He was not releasing his leverage. He was redirecting it. He was going to put the gun on her instead, because she was the one with the information and because she had made herself the most valuable person in the room by claiming to be. He closed the distance between them in 3 steps. He raised the weapon. He pointed it at her chest from approximately 4 feet away, and he said very quietly, "You are going to tell me right now." Maya looked at the gun. She looked at the man holding it. She said, "Okay." Then several things happened very quickly. She stepped left and forward simultaneously inside his arm, not away from the weapon, but toward it, which was the last thing he expected. Her right hand came up under his gun hand and rotated at the wrist in a specific direction, a direction that used the weakest point of the human grip against itself, and the gun pivoted out of his fingers before his nervous system had finished registering that she had moved. Her left elbow came up and made brief, efficient contact with the side of his jaw. He went sideways into the wall. The whole sequence took approximately 2 seconds. She had the gun. The room did not make a sound. Mr. Okafor's wheelchair had rolled itself 3 feet to the left during the commotion, and he was sitting in it with both hands over his mouth, which was open, staring at Maya with an expression that suggested his mind was still working on accepting the last 30 seconds. Maya held the disarmed weapon at a low-angle muzzle toward the floor and turned her attention to the 2 men in dark jackets. One of them had his hand inside his jacket. She looked at him steadily. "Don't," she said. He didn't. The gunman was against the wall. He was shaking his head slowly, one hand on his jaw, the expression of a man trying to figure out what century he was in. Dolores Pittman, who had been at the back of the room with a patient file in her hand since the beginning of all of this, said in a voice of absolute disbelief, "What in the—" "Dolores," Maya said, not looking away from the 2 men in dark jackets. "I need you to get Mr. Okafor into a room and stay with him. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me." "Maya, what is—" "Dolores, please." A pause, then the sound of Dolores moving, speaking low to Mr. Okafor, the creak of the wheelchair being pushed. "Good." Patel was still behind the front desk. He was breathing through his mouth. "Should I call?" "Yes, call 911. Tell them you have an armed incursion in progress at the hospital. Give them the address and your name, then stay on the line and stay behind that desk. Do not come out." She finally looked at him. "Can you do that?" He nodded with the jerky enthusiasm of someone very glad to have a specific task. "Good." She looked back at the 2 men in dark jackets. The one on the left had not moved. The one on the right had taken his hand out of his jacket. They were both watching her with a quality of attention she recognized from a different life. Professional assessment. They were recalibrating. They had come here expecting scared nurses and overwhelmed hospital staff. They had not expected her. Join the club, she thought. "Both of you," she said, "hands where I can see them, right now." They looked at each other. "I'm not going to ask twice," she said, "and I want you to know I'm being polite about it." The man on the left brought his hands up slowly. The man on the right followed. They were hands of people who worked with their hands in very specific ways. She could see the calluses from where she stood. The gunman on the floor was starting to gather himself. "You have no idea what you're interfering with." "Yes, I know. You can explain it to me while the police are here." She looked at the room at large now, patients, orderlies, the intake clerk who had plastered himself to the wall near the filing cabinet. Everyone who can move, I need you to move to the back hallway, not running, calmly. Help anyone who needs help moving. Go now. People began to move. Slowly at first, then steadier, the way crowds move when they've been given clear direction by someone who sounds like they know what the direction is for. She was tracking the two men in dark jackets. She was tracking the downed gunman. She was tracking the door to the ambulance bay, the main entrance, the hallway to the trauma bays, the window behind the nursing station, the location of every movable piece of furniture in the room that could serve as cover if things got significantly worse than they already were. She was also aware in the background of all of it of a specific fact that was making her chest feel tight in a way that had nothing to do with fear. The man on the gurney. Victor Harland, the name the paramedic had not said but that Maya had read upside down on the transfer sheet in the 30 seconds before the chaos began. The name she had recognized immediately with a cold clarity, the way you recognize the sound of a particular kind of aircraft from a significant distance away. Victor Harlan was not just a man with 2 gunshot wounds. She knew who he was. She knew exactly who he was. And that knowledge was sitting in the center of her chest right now, like a stone, because it meant that whoever had sent these men was operating at a level that made this whole situation significantly more dangerous than it appeared. A radio crackled. It came from the jacket of the man on the right, and both of them froze because Maya had already crossed the distance between them, and her hand was on the radio before any of them had time to react. She pulled it free, stepped back. Bay 3 is clear, moving to secondary. The voice on the radio was calm and precise. Someone reading from a script. Someone who had planned this. There were more of them in the building. Not 2 more, not 3. She could tell from the specificity of that transmission, the reference to Bay 3, which was nowhere near the emergency department, which was 2 floors up in the surgical wing. They had spread out. They knew the building. This had not been improvised tonight. This had been assembled over time by people who understood how hospitals worked, where the patients went, which floors had security, and which did not. She looked at the 2 men in front of her. "How many?" she said. Neither of them answered. "How many people do you have in this building right now?" The one on the left almost smiled. "More than you can handle, sweetheart." She held his gaze for a moment. "I wouldn't be sure about that," she said. Then she looked past him and called out to Patel, who was still on the phone at the front desk, eyes round as coins. "Patel, when you talk to the police, tell them the incursion is building-wide. Tell them they need units at every external entrance, and they need to clear the building floor by floor, starting from the bottom. Tell them there are critical patients in trauma who cannot be moved." Patel was repeating this into the phone with the careful diction of someone who understood that getting the words wrong would have consequences. She looked at the door to the trauma bays. Behind that door, Victor Harlan was on a table with Dr. Reyes and 2 surgical nurses working to keep him alive. Behind that door, 2 gunshot wounds were slowly becoming either survivable or not survivable, depending entirely on whether the next several minutes went well or went badly. She needed to get back there. She needed to know what she was dealing with. But first she had 3 armed men to manage in a building full of frightened patients and staff, and more armed people moving through the floors above her who were operating on a plan that she had about 30 seconds to disrupt before it got too far along to disrupt. She thought about the layout of the building. She had memorized it in her first week the way she memorized every layout she ever operated in. Not because she expected anything like this, just because that was who she was. That was what 43 days of being the quiet mouse in the corner was built on. Observation, detail, the particular practice of knowing a space better than anyone expects you to know it. The stairwell on the north end of the building was not covered by hospital security cameras. She knew that because she had noticed on day 4 that the camera mount was empty. She had assumed it was a maintenance gap. Now she was revising that assumption. The second stairwell on the east end had a camera, but the angle covered only the landing, not the door. She knew that because on day 11 she had stood at the door for 30 seconds trying to figure out if the lens was correctly aimed. It was not. If she were running this operation, she would have used both stairwells. She would have staged her people across multiple floors, moved them toward the target, and simultaneously cut off the exits and created enough pressure points that hospital security and any police response would be spread too thin to effectively respond. She would have done it exactly the way she estimated these people were doing it right now. The question was where Victor Harlan fit into whatever larger architecture this violence was serving. Because someone had sent professionals to a hospital. Someone had planned a building-wide incursion. You did not do that for a man who simply owed you money or had crossed you in some personal way. You did that for a reason that was strategic, geopolitical, the kind of reason that operated at elevations most people never thought about. Maya knew about those elevations. She had worked at those elevations once. In another life, before Houston Metropolitan, and the green notebook and the paperback she never made progress in, and the nickname The Mouse. She pushed all of that down. Right now there was a problem in front of her that needed solving, and she was the person who was going to solve it. That was the only thing that mattered. Here's what's going to happen, she said, and her voice had taken on a quality that the people in the room who had known her for 43 days had never heard before. It was not louder, it was not harder. It was simply the voice of someone who has taken a position and has already decided they will not be moved from it. You three are going to get down on the ground, hands behind your heads. The police are going to be here in approximately 8 minutes. You're going to wait for them quietly. That's the best outcome available to you tonight, and I'm offering it to you right now. The other outcomes get worse from here. The man on the left had stopped, almost smiling. He was looking at her the way the gunman had looked at her before he figured out he had made a serious error in judgment. Reassessing, recalculating. "Who are you?" he said. It was a real question, not a taunt, not a rhetorical challenge. He genuinely wanted to know because whatever answer he had started this night with it no longer matched what he was looking at. Maya held the disarmed weapon level and steady. She looked at him with eyes that gave him nothing. "A nurse," she said. And somewhere in the building above her, a door opened that she could not hear, and the people who had come for Victor Harlan moved one step closer to what they had come here to do. The radio in Maya's hand crackled again. "Target is still in Bay 2. Confirm, Bay 2. We need a second team at the east stairwell." Wow, she clicked it off. The man on the left was still watching her from. He had not moved toward the floor the way she had told him to. Neither had the one on the right. The gunman she had disarmed was sitting against the wall now, with his hand against his jaw, and his eyes doing the slow calculation of someone deciding whether the situation was still recoverable or whether survival was the better ambition. "On the ground," Maya said again. Same tone, no escalation. "I'm not going to keep saying it." "You took one gun," the man on the left said. "You think that changes anything?" "I think it changes the conversation you were planning to have tonight, yes." Patel's voice came from behind the front desk, thin and strained. "Maya, police say 8 minutes, maybe 10. There's an accident on Westheimer, they're routing around it." 10 minutes. She adjusted the number in her head and did not let the adjustment show on her face. The man on the left saw something in her expression anyway. People who worked in violence learned to read micro-expressions the way musicians learn to hear pitch. He said, 10 minutes is a long time." "It is," she agreed, "so let's not waste it." She moved, not toward him. She moved laterally, cutting an angle toward the hallway that led to the trauma bays, and she did it in a way that kept both men in front of her without giving either of them a clear line. It was a specific kind of movement, the kind that required knowing exactly how much space was behind you without having to look. The man on the right shifted to cut her off. "Don't," she said, and something in the single word stopped him, the way a physical barrier would have stopped him, and she could see him being frustrated by his own stopping because he outweighed her by 60 pounds, and he had training, and he had a gun still inside his jacket, and none of that seemed to be the point right now. "You can't get to that hallway," the man on the left said. "We have people on the other side of that door." "I know you do." "Then you know this is already over." "What I know," Maya said, "is that you have people on the other side of a door that leads to a room where a man is in emergency surgery, and the surgeon working on him was Dr. Anita Reyes, who has been doing trauma surgery for 16 years, and who right now has no idea what is happening on this side of the door. And if your people go through that door while she is working on that man, there is a very high probability that the man you came here for dies on the table before he can tell you whatever you came here to make him tell you." A pause. The man on the left had gone very still. "So either," Maya continued, "you actually want him dead, in which case this conversation is different, Or you want him alive, in which case every person you have moving toward that bay right now is working against your own objective. Those are your options. The man on the right looked at the man on the left. Something passed between them and that looked fast and wordless. Let me make a call, the man on the left said. No. You don't have the authority to no calls, no radios. Whatever instructions went out before I took that radio, they're already in motion and we're going to deal with what that produces. But you're not adding to it from in here. She looked at him steadily. On the ground, both of you. And your friend by the wall, now. You are one person, now the man on the right said, with a kind of bewildered emphasis like he was trying to solve a math problem that kept coming out wrong. You are one person with one gun. Yes, Maya said simply. Another look passed between them. Then the gunman from the floor, the one whose jaw she had introduced to her elbow, made a decision. He pushed himself up from the wall fast, not toward her, toward the hallway door, clearly calculating that splitting her attention was the play. He got 2 steps before Maya's voice cracked across the room like something physical. Stop. He stopped. He stopped because the voice contained something that short-circuited the body's ability to keep moving the same way certain sounds in nature stop animals mid-stride. He stopped and he turned and he looked at her, and she could see on his face that he did not entirely understand why he had stopped. Sit back down, she said, or I will stop you differently, and the differently will hurt considerably more than the first time. He sat back down. Dolores Pittman appeared at the edge of the back hallway. She had a fire extinguisher in her hands and the expression of a woman who has made her peace with whatever happens next. Maya, I got Mr. Okafor settled. What do you need? I need you to go back to that hallway and... I'm not going back to any hallway. I have been a nurse in this ER for 19 years, and there are patients back there that these people might be moving toward. And if you think I'm going to need to stand in a hallway while... Dolores. Don't Dolores me, but tell me what to do. Maya looked at her for 1 second. Dolores Pittman was 53 years old, broad-shouldered, had raised 3 sons largely by herself, and was currently holding a fire extinguisher with the grip of someone who had decided it was a weapon. She was also, Maya knew from 43 days of observation, genuinely one of the most competent people in this building. The supply room at the end of the back hallway has a secondary door that connects to the administrative corridor, Maya said. That corridor runs parallel to the main hallway and comes out near the elevators. If they're using the east stairwell, the administrative corridor gives us a line to cut them off before they reach the surgical wing. I need someone who knows this building. Dolores blinked. How do you know about the administrative corridor? I've been here 19 years and half the nurses don't know about that corridor. I paid attention. Clearly. Dolores adjusted her grip on the fire extinguisher. What do I do when I get there? You don't engage anyone. You wedge the corridor door and you make sure none of our patients from the back hallway end up in anyone's path. Can you do that? Can I do that? Dolores said it not quite like a question. She turned and went back down the hallway with the extinguisher under her arm like a running back protecting the football. The man on the left was watching all of this with the expression of someone experiencing something genuinely new. You've been here 43 days, he said. That's right. You mapped the building. I familiarize myself with spaces I work in. It's a habit. That's not a nursing habit. Maya looked at him. She did not respond. The moment stretched out between them, taut as a wire. And then, from somewhere above them in the building, a sound came through the ceiling that made several people in the waiting room flinch. Not a gunshot. A crash. Something heavy meeting a floor at speed. Then voices muffled through 2 floors of concrete and tile. Something had gone wrong above them. Or right, depending on whose side you were tracking. Patel said quietly, Maya, there's someone at the ambulance bay door. She looked. The ambulance bay door had a narrow vertical window beside it. Through that window, she could see a shape. One person standing just outside, not trying to come in, standing still, which was either extremely calm or extremely tactical, and she could not tell which from this distance. Stay behind the desk, she told Patel. She moved toward the window, keeping the angle, keeping the 3 men in her peripheral. She reached the edge of the window and looked. The person outside was a woman. Medium height, short dark hair, wearing a gray jacket over hospital scrubs. She was not carrying anything visible. She was looking directly at the window with the focused patience of someone who has done a great deal of waiting in difficult circumstances and has made her peace with it as an occupational reality. Maya looked at her for a moment. The woman outside made a very small gesture with her right hand. A specific gesture, 3 fingers, then a closed fist, then 2 fingers extended. It was not a wave. It was not a signal that anyone who had not been trained in a specific context would recognize as anything at all. Maya's chest did something complicated. She reached over and pressed the door release. The woman came in. She scanned the room in 1 second, took in the 3 men, took in Patel, took in Maya, and settled on Maya with the direct attention of someone who has found exactly what they were looking for. "You have 4 individuals on the 2nd floor," she said without preamble. 2 are down, 1 temporarily, 1 more permanently. 2 are still moving. They're heading for surgical bay 3, not 2. They changed the target. Maya's stomach dropped. Who changed it? Someone on the inside gave them updated information after the patient was moved. Harland is not in trauma bay 2 anymore. Reyes moved him when things got loud out here. He's in bay 3. The man on the left made a sound that was almost involuntary, a sharp intake of breath that confirmed he had not known about the change and was extremely displeased to be learning about it this way. "Who are you?" Maya said. "Someone who's been watching this building for 6 hours and is very glad you were inside it." The woman looked at the 3 men. "Are these secured functionally?" "Patel," Maya said without looking away from the woman. "When the police arrive, these 3 do not move from this room. Can you hold that?" Patel looked at the 3 armed men and then at the fire extinguisher Dolores had left leaning against the wall and made a decision that probably surprised him more than anyone else. "Yeah," he said. "Yeah, I can hold that." Maya handed him the disarmed weapon. She showed him how to hold it low and pointed down her hands, moving his into position with the efficient patience of someone teaching a skill in the 30 seconds available for teaching it. "You don't point it at anyone unless they come through that door toward you. You understand?" "I understand." "Good." She looked at the woman. "Show me where." They moved into the back hallway at a pace that was not quite running, efficient and purposeful, 2 people who had reached an unspoken agreement about speed and direction without negotiating it out loud. Around them, the hospital breathed its particular nighttime breath, the ventilation, the distant beeps of monitors, the compressed quiet of a building that was holding very still because it could feel that something was wrong. "How do you know the signal?" Maya said as they moved. "Because I know who you are," the woman said. "That's not an answer. It's the only one I have time to give you right now." She glanced sideways at Maya. "Lioness." The name hit Maya like cold water. She had not heard it spoken aloud in 4 years. She had not thought about it in almost as long. Or rather, she had thought about it the way you think about a door you have locked and slid furniture in front of and told yourself you are not going to open again. "You have the wrong person," Maya said. "I have exactly the right person, and you know it." The woman ducked around a supply cart. 2 men, surgical wing, 4th floor. One of them is carrying something that is not a weapon, but is significantly more dangerous than a weapon. "What is it?" "A drive." Harlan was carrying intelligence before he was shot. Someone in his network intercepted the information before it could be transmitted. The drive is the last copy. If they retrieve it from Harlan or the hospital system before we do 17 operational networks go dark permanently. Maya processed this in the time it took to round a corner. Harlan brought it here. He didn't have a choice. He was shot 40 minutes before he reached the hospital. He had enough time to do one thing, and he chose to get to a place where someone might keep him alive long enough to figure out the next move. The woman looked at her. "He was hoping you would be here." "He didn't know I was here." "He knew you took a nursing position in Houston 4 months ago. He's the one who made sure this hospital was on your list of options." The corridor narrowed. They were moving through the administrative hallway now, the one Maya had sent Dolores toward, and the sound from above them was getting clearer. Voices, movement, the particular thud of people moving fast through a space they are not entirely familiar with. Dolores was at the end of the corridor, pressed against the wall beside the door she had wedged open, fire extinguisher raised. She saw Maya and her expression shifted through about 6 emotions in 2 seconds. "There are 2 of them on the other side of this door," she said in a voice barely above breath. "They went past about a minute ago. I could hear them talking about Bay 3. Are they past the elevator bank?" "I think so." Maya looked at the woman beside her. She looked at the door. She did not look at anything else for a moment because she was running the layout in her head. The floor above her, rendered in the specific clarity of a memory that had been built deliberately, exit here, stairwell there, surgical bay 3 at the north end, elevator bank in the center, the gap between those points and how much time moving through it would cost versus how much time was already gone. There's a fire door at the north end, Maya said. If they reach it before us, they lock it from the inside and we are behind it. How far? 60 feet from the top of the stairwell. If they're at the elevator bank, then we're already behind, the woman said. Not if we take the maintenance shaft. Dolores stared at her. The what? There's a maintenance shaft access panel in the supply room behind you. It runs vertically through the building. I can reach the 4th floor in about 90 seconds if the rungs are spaced the way they are on the 3rd. You've been in the maintenance shaft, Dolores said. Not a question, not quite an accusation. Something in between, colored with a dawning understanding that the nurse she had worked beside for 43 days was considerably more than the nurse she had worked beside for 43 days. Day 7, Sam, Maya said simply. I like to know a building. Dolores opened her mouth, closed it. Then go, I'll hold this door. Maya was already moving back toward the supply room. The woman followed her, and Maya could hear her on the phone behind her speaking in clipped phrases that were clearly a report to someone who was waiting for it. Words like 4th floor and maintenance access and lioness is moving. She found the panel. It was exactly where she remembered it. She had opened it once before in her first week late at night when the shift was quiet, and she had told herself she was just curious and had not entirely believed herself. She pulled it open now, and the shaft exhaled its particular smell of dust and metal and the particular darkness that exists inside the hidden structures of buildings. She went up fast, hand over hand, feet finding the rungs by feel the weight of her body and the weight of the situation carrying her upward with an urgency that required no calculation. The shaft was narrow. The climb was not comfortable. She did not think about comfort. She counted floors by the horizontal structures she passed. Ground. Second, the sound of voices somewhere to her left, on the 2nd floor, the police maybe, or the building's own confused response to what was happening inside it. Third, the air changed very slightly, the way air changes when you get higher in a sealed structure. She found the 4th floor access panel and pushed it. It opened into a utility closet. She moved through it and into the hallway and stopped. 2 men, 40 feet away. One was trying at the handle of the fire door at the north end. The other was standing with his back to the wall covering the hallway. He saw her the same moment she entered his sightline. He reacted fast. She reacted faster. She moved toward him in a straight line at a speed that communicated she had no intention of stopping, which was factually accurate, and the speed and directness of it disrupted the normal sequence of threat response that trained people operate on, because trained people expect someone facing them to take cover or create distance, not to close it at full speed. His weapon was coming up, and her hand was already under it, and the sequence that followed was similar to the one that had happened on the ground floor, but adapted for the environment, for the man's particular height and grip and the angle between them. He went into the wall, harder than the first one. The man at the fire door turned. He was the one carrying something. She could see the shape of it under his jacket, not a weapon too flat, too small, the hard rectangle of a storage device in an interior pocket. He pulled his hand out of his jacket, and he had a secondary weapon in it, smaller than his primary, and he was fast with it, actually fast, the kind of fast that came from real training and real practice. He fired. The shot went past Maya's left ear at a distance she would not have enjoyed measuring. She had already moved, dropping and rolling left, coming up behind the supply cart that was sitting in the hallway, and she was aware simultaneously of a burning in her left shoulder that was either a graze or a fragment, and was going to be a problem later, but was not a problem right this moment. "You are in a hospital," she said from behind the cart. Her voice was level. Extraordinary as that was, it was level. "You just fired a weapon in a hospital. There are patients on this floor." "Move away from that cart," the man said. "I'm going to need you to put the weapon down." "That's not going to happen." "Then we're going to stay here until the police arrive, and based on the sound from downstairs, they are approximately 3 minutes out." The man looked toward the fire door. Maya had positioned herself between him and the main stairwell and the elevator bank. He had the fire door, But the fire door opened to an external staircase that landed in the hospital parking structure, and from the parking structure to anywhere useful was a long enough distance that 3 minutes of police response time became a significant obstacle. He was running the same calculation she was. The drive, Maya said. Whatever is on it, it's already been reported. Whatever intelligence value it had, it is compromised the moment this building became an active incident. 17 networks, or 70, it doesn't matter anymore. The operation is blown. Taking it out of here doesn't change that. It just adds to the charges you're already looking at. A pause. Who told you about the drive? He said. Someone who has been watching this building for 6 hours. Another pause. She could hear him breathing. She could hear the man she had put into the wall breathing also or trying to from the floor somewhere behind her. She could hear the building. She could hear faintly the sound of sirens below, which was not quite 3 minutes but was close enough. I'm a nurse, Maya said from behind the cart. I have been shot at in places considerably more inconvenient than this hallway, and I am still standing here having a conversation with you. I need you to think about what that tells you about how this evening ends. The sirens got louder. The man with the drive looked at the fire door, looked toward Maya's position, looked at the fire door again. Then he put the weapon on the floor. Maya came around the cart. Her left shoulder was bleeding, not badly, a graze along the outside of the deltoid, but it was real and it was hers, and she registered it with the same neutral competence she would have applied to registering it on someone else's chart. She crossed to him and she took the drive from his interior pocket with a hand that was entirely steady. She looked at it. A standard external drive, small black anonymous, the kind you could buy at any electronics store for $20. Containing apparently the kind of information that was worth sending armed men into a hospital to recover. She put it in her own pocket. Behind her, the woman from downstairs appeared at the utility closet door, slightly out of breath from what Maya assumed was a faster route than the maintenance shaft. She looked at the two men on the floor, looked at Maya, looked at the drive-shaped outline in Maya's pocket. You got it, she said. I got it. Your shoulder. I know about my shoulder. I know what it needs. I'm a nurse. Maya looked down the hallway toward the sound of the sirens. The police are here. I need to get back to my patients. The woman stared at her. She had the expression of someone who had prepared extensively for a complicated operation and had not prepared for the operation to be completed by a single person in hospital scrubs in under 9 minutes. Lioness, she started. Don't call me that, Maya said. She was already walking. My name is Maya Van Serene. I work in the ER. She walked back down the hallway and did not look back, and the drive in her pocket was solid and real against her hip. And downstairs in Trauma Bay, a man named Victor Harlan was fighting to stay alive on a surgeon's table, and Maya had 43 days of quiet observation and a secret she had buried under a new name and a small green notebook, and the quiet was gone. Now blown open like those ambulance doors had blown open at the start of the night, and there was no putting it back. She pressed her hand against her shoulder and kept walking. The blood had soaked through the shoulder of her scrubs by the time Maya reached the third-floor landing. Not enough to be dangerous. Enough to be noticed, and she did not want to be noticed. Not right now. Not with the building filling up with police officers who would have questions she did not have time to answer. She pressed her palm flat against the wound and kept moving. The stairwell door at the bottom of the third floor opened before she reached it. 2 uniformed officers came through fast with their hands on their weapons, and Maya stopped and raised the hand that was not pressed to her shoulder and said, Nurse, I work here. I was upstairs, in a voice that was calm and clear and left no room for misinterpretation. And they looked at her and at the blood and at her face, and something in her face made them both pause in the specific way that people pause when they encounter someone who does not behave the way the situation suggests they should behave. Ma'am, you're bleeding, the first officer said. I know. There are 2 individuals down on the 4th floor hallway north end. One fired a weapon. Neither is in a condition to cause further problems, but you should restrain both of them before the adrenaline wears off and someone gets ambitious. She looked at them steadily. There are also 3 individuals in the ground floor ER waiting area. A man named Patel has them. He's been alone with them for approximately 7 minutes, and he is not trained for this, so if you could get someone down there before he runs out of nerve, I would appreciate it. The first officer had his radio up before she finished the sentence. The second officer looked at her shoulder. We need to get that looked at. I'm going to look at it myself, Maya said. I'm a nurse and this is my hospital. Excuse me? She went through the door before he could object. The administrative corridor was quiet now. Dolores was still at the far end, fire extinguisher lowered, standing with the particular posture of someone who has been running on emergency adrenaline and is beginning to feel the first edges of the come down. She looked at Maya. She looked at Maya's shoulder. Her mouth formed a word she did not say out loud. I'm fine, Maya said. You are not fine. You have been shot. Grazed, there's a difference. There is not as much difference as you seem to think there is. Dolores crossed the distance between them in 6 steps and took Maya by the arm, not roughly, but with the absolute authority of a nurse who has decided a medical situation is occurring whether the patient agrees or not. Come here, let me see it. Dolores imagined, Maya Vansarin. I have been in this ER for 19 years. I have seen people tell me they are fine while they are actively losing blood, and I have learned not to trust it. Let me see your shoulder. Maya let her look. It was easier than arguing, and also she was beginning to feel the shoulder more acutely now that the immediate operational pressure had reduced slightly the way injuries always made themselves known the moment the body decided it had permission. Dolores pulled the scrub fabric aside with practiced hands. She made a sound of assessment that was not quite relief and not quite alarm, but lived somewhere professional between the two. Through and through along the outer deltoid, needs cleaning and closing. You're going to need stitches. Later. Now. Dolores, Harland is in Bay 3. Is Reyes still with him? Dolores straightened. Something moved across her face that was the complex mixture of exasperation and respect that Maya had been generating in people all evening. She never left. That woman does not leave her table until the work is done, you know that. Is he stable? Last I heard, before everything went sideways up here, they had him stabilized. The second wound was the problem, nicked something it shouldn't have, but Reyes got ahead of it. She paused. Maya, who is he, the man they came for? Maya looked at her. She thought about what to say and how much of it was hers to say. Someone important enough that people with training and resources decided tonight was the night to come after him in a hospital. I figured that part out myself, thank you. Dolores folded her arms. I mean, who is he to you? A beat. I don't know him, Maya said, but you knew he was coming. I recognized his name when the transfer sheet came through. And you didn't say anything. I didn't know anything was going to happen. I recognized a name, that's all. Dolores looked at her for a long moment with the eyes of a woman who has raised 3 sons and learned to identify the specific texture of a partial truth. She did not push. She said, the police are going to want to talk to you. I know. And someone else is going to want to talk to you. There's a man downstairs. He came in about 10 minutes ago with the second wave of police, but he's not police. He had a different kind of badge and a different kind of quiet about him, and he asked for you by name. Maya was still. What name? Dolores held her gaze. He didn't say Vansarin. The weight of that landed in Maya's chest and settled there solid and cold. She had known, some part of her had known, from the moment the woman in the gray jacket had said lioness in the back hallway, that the circle was closing. That the life she had built here, the 43 days, in the green notebook, in the nickname, and the careful smallness of everything was already in the past, even if she was still technically standing in the present. What did he look like? She said. 50s, gray at the temples, the kind of straight that isn't posture, it's bone structure. He smiled at me when I asked him who he was, and it was the politest smile I have ever not trusted. Maya almost smiled herself. Where is he? He said he would find you. As if on cue, the door at the far end of the corridor opened. The man who came through it was exactly what Dolores had described. 50s iron gray at the temples, the kind of posture that suggested the military had shaped his spine at 18, and he had never seen a reason to deviate from it since. He wore civilian clothes and a lanyard with credentials that he was not displaying. His smile when he found Maya was the particular smile of someone who has been looking for something for a long time and has just located it. Sergeant Vansarin, he see it. That's not my name anymore. No, he agreed pleasantly. It's not. My name is Carver, Colonel Marcus Carver. I think you and I should have a conversation. I think you should tell me why armed men came into my hospital tonight. That is exactly the conversation I want to have. He looked at her shoulder. Something shifted in his expression, a micro movement that might have been concern and might have been calculation. After someone looks at that, it's being looked at, Dolores said firmly, producing a supply kit from somewhere with the efficiency of a woman who never goes anywhere unprepared. Both of you can talk while I work. Sit down, Maya, and I mean it. Maya sat. It was genuinely a relief, though she would not have said so. Carver stood. He had the habit of people who do not sit easily in uncertain environments, who keep their feet under them until they understand all the exits. He looked around the corridor with the same systematic read that Maya had used on every space she had entered tonight. She noticed him noticing. He noticed her noticing. A small acknowledgement passed between them that had no words. Victor Harlan has been running an intelligence network in 3 countries for 11 years, Carver said without preamble, because he was clearly a man who had assessed her as someone who did not need it eased into. 4 months ago, something inside that network went wrong. He spent 2 months trying to identify the source of the problem. 6 weeks ago, he found it. Maya did not move while Dolores cleaned the wound. She kept her eyes on Carver. And then someone shot him. And then someone shot him. Yes, he had taken precautions. The intelligence he had compiled about the compromise was on a physical drive. He was moving it to a secure location when the operation against him was activated. Carver paused. He reached this hospital instead. He reached this hospital, Maya said carefully, because someone made sure this hospital was on my options list 4 months ago. A beat. Carver did not look surprised, which confirmed it. He wanted insurance, Maya said. He knew he was being watched. He knew the network was compromised. He put me in proximity in case he needed someone on the inside that the opposition hadn't accounted for. That's one way to describe it. Is there another way? He trusted you, Carver said, and there was no calculation in it that time, just the plain statement. He knew what you were. He knew what you could do, and he needed someone he could trust in a place where he might end up. Dolores's hands paused for half a second on Maya's shoulder and then continued. She did not say anything, but Maya could feel the quality of her listening shift. The drive is in my pocket, Maya said. Carver's expression did not change dramatically, but something behind his eyes sharpened. I know. The woman who met you earlier reported in. Who is she? Her name is Solace. She's been watching Harlan's situation for 3 months. When the operation activated tonight, she was the closest asset we had to the hospital. He looked at Maya directly. She was not close enough. You were. I'm a nurse, Maya said. I'm not an asset. Maya. Carver said her name the way people say names when they want the name itself to carry an argument. You disarmed 3 armed professionals, secured a ground floor full of civilians, climbed a maintenance shaft, recovered a critical intelligence drive, and neutralized 2 additional operatives. In a hospital, in scrubs, with no backup and no briefing. Dolores tied off the last closure on Maya's shoulder with a precision that suggested she was channeling several feelings into the knot. Done, she said. Her voice was steady. You'll need antibiotics and a proper dressing in about 6 hours. Don't use the arm more than you have to. Thank you, Dolores. Dolores stood. She looked at Carver. She looked at Maya. She said, I have patients to check on, and walked to the end of the corridor and through the door and did not look back, and Maya knew her well enough by now to know that the not looking back was taking something. Carver waited until the door closed. She'll have questions. She'll keep them to herself. She's good at that. Maya stood carefully. The shoulder protested in a specific informative way. She noted it. What's on the drive, Carver? Specifically. Names, 17 individuals embedded in government positions across 4 countries who have been feeding information to a private intelligence network that has been operating against Allied interests for 6 years. Harlan identified all 17. He has documentation, operational records, financial trails. Carver looked at her steadily. If that drive had been recovered by the people who sent those men tonight, all 17 would have been extracted and relocated within 48 hours. We would never have found them again. Maya let the weight of that settle. She reached into her pocket and took out the drive and looked at it in her hand. Small, black, anonymous. 17 names and 6 years of damage, and the difference between something being fixable and something being permanently broken. All of it on a piece of hardware that cost $20 retail. She held it out to Carver. He took it. He looked at it with an expression that contained more things than his face normally seemed equipped to hold. Relief was in there. And something else, something that looked almost like grief. The grief of someone who has been in a long fight and has just cleared one obstacle and knows immediately how many more are waiting. The men who came tonight, Maya said, they're connected to the network. To the people the network serves. Yes. He put the drive in his jacket pocket. Tonight was damage control. Whoever compromised Harlan's network knew he had compiled this. They needed it back before it reached us. How did they know he was here, the hospital? The inside source, Carver said. There's a leak in the administrative structure here. Someone who knew Harlan was brought in and passed the location. Maya's mind went to the updated information the woman in the gray jacket had mentioned. The target is in Bay 3, not 2. Someone on the inside gave them updated information. She had filed it and not had time to come back to it until now. Someone in this hospital, she said. We believe so. Do you know who? Carver looked at her. We have a suspicion. We need confirmation. That's why you're still in the building. That's one reason. Maya looked at him. He was good at the composed professional face. Very good. But she had spent years in rooms with people who were very good at composed professional faces, and she had learned to read the things that moved underneath them. Carver had come here for the drive. He had come here for the leak. And he had come here for something else, something he had not said yet, and it was sitting in the back of his eyes with the patience of something that has been waiting a long time. What else? She said. He did not pretend not to know what she meant. Harlan wants to see you. She did not answer immediately. The ventilation moved air through the corridor. Somewhere in the building, people were talking in the brisk professional way of a situation being processed and cataloged and documented, police and staff, and the particular bureaucracy of aftermath. He's not conscious, she said. He wasn't. He is now. Dr. Reyes says it's 10 minutes, maybe 15, before she needs him back under. Carver looked at her with the careful respect of someone who knows they are asking something that is not simply a question. He asked for Lioness. He was clear about it. Those were the first words he said when he came back. The name again, in this hallway. Out of this man's mouth. Maya stood with her hand against her closed shoulder, and she looked at the wall in front of her, and she thought about the life she had built in this building in 43 days, and the life she had left behind 4 years before that, and the distance between those two things that she had told herself was geography, but that tonight had demonstrated was not. Lead, she said. They went through the door together. The surgical wing on the 3rd floor was quieter than the floors below. The police presence here was lighter. 2 officers at the elevator bank, one at the far end of the hall, all of them with the settled posture of people who have confirmed that the immediate threat has passed and are now managing the perimeter. They looked at Carver and stepped aside, which told Maya something precise about the credentials on the lanyard he wasn't displaying. Trauma Bay 3 was at the north end. Doctor. Reyes was in the anteroom washing her hands with the deliberate thoroughness of someone who does it as much for mental calibration as for hygiene. She looked up when Maya came through. Your shoulder, Reyes said immediately. Dolores closed it. It's fine. Reyes looked at her for a long second with the focused assessment of a trauma surgeon who has spent 16 years learning to evaluate bodies accurately and quickly. It is not fine, but it is not immediately dangerous, which I will accept for now. He woke up about 12 minutes ago. He's oriented. His pressure is holding. She looked at Carver. 5 minutes. After that sedation, whether anyone has anything left to say or not. Understood, Carver said. Maya pushed through into Bay 3. Victor Harlan looked considerably smaller on the table than he had looked on the gurney coming in. That was the thing about serious injury. It rearranged the proportions of people. The granite jaw and iron hair were still there, but the force that had animated them had been partially rerouted into the business of staying alive. And what remained visible was a man in his 60s with 2 gunshot wounds and tubes in his arm, and the particular expression of someone who has had a significant conversation with their own mortality in the last few hours and has come back from it not entirely unchanged. His eyes found Maya the moment she came in. They were gray eyes sharp even now, and the recognition in them was immediate and unguarded. "Knew you'd be here," he said. His voice was thin, but the intention behind it was not. "You put me here," Maya said. She stood beside the table and looked at him and felt the complicated mixture of things she had expected to feel, which was the anger of someone whose carefully constructed piece had been deliberately used as a tool, and also the other thing underneath it, the thing she did not want to feel, which was something closer to relief, that he was alive, that whatever he had built and protected and been shot for was still in the world. "Yes," Harlan said. He did not apologize for it. She had not expected him to. "The drive is with Carver." "Good," he exhaled. "You got them all. The ones in the building. There'll be more. Not tonight, but there'll be more." His eyes had not left her face. "I need to tell you something." "Harlan, the compromise in my network, the 17 names on the drive." He stopped, swallowed. The monitor beside him tracked his heart in clean green peaks. "One of the 17 is someone you know." Maya went very still. "Someone from before," Harlan said. "From your unit. Someone you trusted." The stillness in her was absolute. Outside the room, the building continued its recovery voices and radios, and the slow return of normal. And inside this room, a man on a table was telling her something that was quietly rearranging everything she thought she knew about the years she had already lived. "Who?" she said. Harlan told her. She stood there for 3 seconds after he said the name. 3 seconds in which her face did not move, and her breathing did not change, and the monitor beside Harlan continued its clean green peaks, regular and indifferent. Then Dr. Reyes came in. "That's time," Reyes said in the voice that did not negotiate. Maya stepped back. She looked at Harlan one more time. He held her eyes with everything he had left, which was not nothing. Even like this, Victor Harlan was not nothing. "Lioness," he said quietly. "Rest," she said, and walked out. Carver was in the anteroom. He looked at her face, and whatever he saw there confirmed something he had been waiting to confirm. He did not say anything. He waited. Maya stood in the anteroom of the surgical bay with the name Harlan had said sitting in the center of her chest like a coal hot and specific, and she looked at the door she had come through, and then she looked at Carver. "Tell me everything you know about the leak in this hospital," she said. Her voice was completely steady. It was the steadiness that comes not from peace, but from a decision being made, a door being opened, furniture being moved away from it. "Tell me right now. And then tell me how much of this you need me for." Carver looked at her with the careful respect of a man who has handled difficult people in difficult circumstances for a long time and understands the difference between someone who has been recruited and someone who has chosen. "All of it," he said simply. "We need you for all of it." Maya nodded once. Somewhere below them in the recovering ER, Patel was probably still behind his desk, running on adrenaline and the particular pride of a person who held a position when it mattered. Dolores was checking on her patients with the fire extinguisher probably still within arm's reach, because Dolores was not the kind of woman who disarmed before she was certain. Mr. Okafor was in a room somewhere with his hip and his bewilderment and a story he would spend years trying to make people believe at family dinners. And Maya Van Saren, who had been the mouse for 43 days, who had eaten lunch alone and kept a notebook and made herself as easy to overlook as furniture, stood in a surgical anteroom with a grazed shoulder and a name burning in her chest, and felt the last door of the life she had built close quietly behind her. She did not look back at it. "Start from the beginning," she told Carver. "We don't have much time." Carver talked for 11 minutes straight, which was 11 minutes more than Maya had expected from a man who carried himself like someone who rationed words the way field operatives rationed ammunition. He laid it out clean and fast, no padding, no softening. The private intelligence network had a name inside the community, a code designation, nothing poetic about it, just a string of letters that translated internally to a group of people who had decided that the information architectures of 4 allied governments were resources to be harvested rather than protected. They had been operating for 6 years. They had people in treasury departments, in defense contracting, in 2 separate signals agencies, and in at least 1 military medical command structure. The 17 names on Harlan's drive were the confirmed inner tier. There were others below them, unknowns, people who passed information without necessarily understanding the full shape of what they were feeding into. The hospital leak was tier 2, not a principal, a conduit. Someone who received a flag when specific names came through the system and passed that flag upward to people who acted on it. Harlan's name had triggered that flag tonight. The armed response had followed within 40 minutes of his admission. 40 minutes, Maya noted. Fast. Too fast to have been improvised. The flag goes through the hospital's administrative intake system, Carver said. Someone with access to patient registration, not clinical administrative. The moment Harlan's name was entered into the system, a notification went somewhere it was not supposed to go. You know who it is. We have a strong candidate. We need confirmation before we move. The candidate has legal counsel and connections, and if we move without confirmation, we lose them, and we alert the network that we're inside their secondary structure. And you need the confirmation tonight. Tonight they're going to know the operation failed. They're going to know the drive didn't get out. By morning, they will begin sanitizing. That includes burning the hospital contact. He looked at her steadily. We have a window. It's closing. Maya thought about this. She thought about the administrative intake system, which she knew because she had watched how it worked from her first day, the quiet machinery of a hospital's bureaucratic back-end names and numbers flowing through screens that nobody looked at twice. She thought about who sat at those screens, who had the access, who had been in the building tonight during the window between Harlan's admission and the arrival of the armed men. A name that was not the name Harlan had told her surfaced in her mind softer, but with its own specific weight. Dennis Craw, she said. Carver's expression did not change dramatically, but his stillness deepened by a precise degree. Why that name? Because on my second day here, I watched him flag a patient record and then make a phone call he walked outside to make. I noted it as a possible HIPAA violation and then didn't do anything about it because I was new and it was one data point, and you don't act on one data point. She looked at Carver. He's on the night administrative intake team. He would have processed Harlan's admission. He was in the building tonight. Is he still? Carver reached for his phone. He made a call that lasted 20 seconds and consisted mostly of listening. When he lowered the phone, his jaw was set in a way that meant the answer to her question was not the answer either of them wanted. He badged out 18 minutes ago, Carver said. Maya was already moving toward the door. Vansarin. He drives a gray Honda. He parks in Structure B because Structure A has a monthly fee, and he complained about it to the intake supervisor. In my first week, I heard him through the break room wall. She pushed through the door. Structure B is 3 minutes from this building on foot. If he's burning files before he disappears, he'll do it from his car because he's not going to risk taking anything home. Carver was beside her in 2 strides, the phone back at his ear, issuing directions to someone on the other end, in a voice that had shed its conversational register entirely and become something flat and precise and absolute. They took the east stair because the elevators were backed up with police personnel and equipment, and time was the currency they had the least of. Maya's shoulder registered the stairwell in a specific and unpleasant way, and she paid it no more attention than that. The ground floor ER was a different environment than the one she had left. The immediate crisis had resolved into the organized chaos of aftermath police officers with tablets. Federal personnel she didn't recognize with the particular composure of people who had been expecting to be. Here, hospital staff moving between official inquiries and patient care with the adaptive competence of people who understand that the work doesn't stop because the circumstances have become extraordinary. Patel was at the desk. He looked like he had aged 4 years in the last 90 minutes, and also like he would not trade the experience for anything. He saw Maya, and his expression did the complicated thing it had been doing all night. You're bleeding through, he said. I know. Patel Dennis Craw from administrative intake. Did you see him leave? Patel blinked. Dennis, yeah, maybe 20 minutes ago. He stopped. He seemed nervous. I thought it was just the night. Which direction did he go? Toward the south exit. Patel paused. Maya, what? Tell the officer at the south desk that we need parking structure B on lockdown. Tell them right now. She was through the south exit before he confirmed. Outside, the night had the bruised quality of a city that has absorbed a shock and not yet processed it. Red and blue light from the police vehicles in the main lot painted everything in alternating colors. Maya moved through it without slowing Carver a half step behind her, 2 officers materializing from somewhere to flank them, in response to whatever Carver had communicated on his phone. Structure B was concrete and fluorescent and smelled of exhaust and the particular staleness of enclosed spaces that cars move through, but people don't inhabit. The third level was where hospital administrative staff parked. Maya had walked through this structure on day 3 because she walked through everything in her first week. She heard him before she saw him. The sound of a car door not closing opening. The click and drag of a laptop bag. A phone ringing and being silenced immediately, which was the sound of someone who had just received a call they expected and did not want to take. Dennis Craw was 44 years old, medium height, with the slightly collapsed posture of someone who had spent 20 years in chairs looking at screens. He had his laptop open on the passenger seat of a gray Honda, and he was moving files with the rapid, concentrated motion of someone who is scared and trying not to show it even to themselves. He heard their footsteps and looked up. And in the half-second before his expression reorganized itself into something rehearsed, Maya saw the truth of him completely. The fear was not the fear of an innocent person confused by a situation. It was the specific fear of someone who has been running a risk for a long time and has just watched the risk arrive. He tried to run. He got 2 steps. One of the officers who had flanked them from the hospital caught him with the clean efficiency of someone who has run down a great many people who thought they could outpace consequences. "Dennis," Maya stepped forward while the officer steadied him against the side of his car. She looked at his face. She had sat across from him in the break room 11 times in 43 days. She had said good morning to him and asked him once if he knew where the extra printer paper was kept, and he had told her helpfully, and they had briefly discussed how the good coffee was always gone by 7 and the bad coffee lasted forever. She had not liked him particularly, but she had not disliked him. She had categorized him as background, the furniture category she had put herself in deliberately, and he had arrived at through the simple accumulation of years in the same role, in the same place. She had been wrong about him the whole time. She filed that alongside her failure to act on the phone call she had witnessed on day 2. 2 data points that she should have connected sooner and hadn't. She noted it without softness, the way you note a tactical error after an operation clearly, honestly, so you don't repeat it. "I want a lawyer," Dennis said. His voice was tight and too high. "You can have one," Carver said, stepping forward. He produced identification that made one of the officers straighten incrementally. "But right now we need to know what you sent and who you sent it to." "I'm not saying anything without—" "Dennis." Maya said his name not loudly, and he stopped the way people kept stopping when she used that particular voice, the one that was not about volume. "Look at me." He looked at her. His eyes were doing the thing that eyes do when a person is trying to manage terror through the performance of composure and failing at the composure part. "I know you're scared," she said. "What you're feeling right now is accurate. This is serious, and the people who had you running this flag system for them are not people who forgive operational failures, which means you are not only in legal jeopardy, you're in physical jeopardy. The moment they know you've been picked up, your value to them as a contact becomes negative. You understand what that means." He understood. She could see that he understood in the way his face lost a layer of the performance and showed something raw underneath. "They'll protect me," he said, but he said it with the desperate inflection of someone trying to convince themselves, not someone who believed it. "They sent 7 armed men into this hospital tonight," Maya said. "One of them fired a weapon on the 4th floor of a building full of sick people. These are not people who protect their ground-level contacts when ground-level contacts become liabilities." She held his eyes. "We can protect you. That's a real offer and it's on the table right now. But the window on it is very short. By morning, the people above you in this chain are going to start burning everything. And if you're still on the wrong side of this conversation when that happens, we can't help you." Dennis Craw looked at her. He looked at Carver. He looked at the 2 officers. He looked back at Maya, and in his face she could see the arithmetic of a man adding up the numbers of his own situation and arriving at a sum he did not like. "There's an email address," he said. "I flag the names in the system I send to the address. That's all I do. That's all I've ever done." "How long were you?" 2 years. He said it like an exhale, like releasing something he had been holding that had grown very heavy. "They told me it was a security audit function. Internal monitoring. I didn't know what it was for until about 6 months ago." "What happened 6 months ago?" He closed his eyes briefly. Someone I flagged didn't show up to work the next day. I saw it in the news a week later. Traffic accident. He opened his eyes. It wasn't a traffic accident. No, Carver said. It wasn't. The silence in the parking structure had a specific quality. The fluorescent light buzzed above them with the indifferent persistence of fluorescent light everywhere. Dennis Craw's laptop was still open on his passenger seat, the files he had been trying to move still visible on the screen. Carver nodded to one of the officers, and the laptop was carefully extracted from the car. The email address, Carver said, and any other contact method. Everything you have. Dennis gave it, all of it, in the precise, itemized way of someone who has decided that cooperation is now the only available currency and intends to spend it while it still has value. Maya stepped back while Carver's people took over the mechanics of it, the recording, the documentation, the careful procedural architecture of evidence being properly gathered. She stood with her good arm across her body, her hand not quite touching her shoulder, and she thought about the name Harlan had given her in Trauma Bay 3. The name from her unit, the name that had been sitting in her chest since he said it hot and specific, and that she had been managing functionally the way you manage a wound in the field pressure, applied forward motion, maintained actual treatment, deferred until the immediate crisis is resolved. The immediate crisis was largely resolved, which meant the name was now the only thing in the room. She pulled out her phone, she looked at it. She did not make a call. Carver appeared beside him. He had the look of a man who has just secured something significant and is already thinking about the next significant thing. Good call on Craw, he said, and the parking structure. I should have flagged him 40 days ago. You were building a cover. You don't flag anomalies when you're building a cover, it draws attention. I wasn't building a cover, she said. I was living here, there's a difference. Carver looked at her sideways. He let that sit without challenging it, which she noted as a form of respect she had not been certain he was capable of. The name Harlan gave me, she said. Riley Soames, Carver said quietly. He had known. Of course he had known. How long have you known? 3 months. When Harlan's analysis came through, Soames's name was the one that took us the longest to believe. A pause. He was your medic, wasn't he? He was my medic for 2.5 years, Maya said. He was in country with me for 4 deployments. He pulled 2 people out of a situation in Kandahar that should not have been survivable. He got a commendation he never talked about. She looked at her phone. He called me when I left. He said he understood. He said, take care of yourself. People are complicated, Carver said. Not as a comfort, as a fact. People are complicated, she agreed in a voice that was not angry and was not sad and was something harder and more durable than either. What do you have on him? Harlan's documentation puts him at the communications layer. He's not triggering operations. He's confirming identities. Names that come through specific intelligence channels get cross-referenced by him and verified before action is taken. Carver paused. The operation tonight was verified by Soames. He confirmed Harlan's location. Maya was quiet for a long moment. The parking structure hummed around her. Below through the concrete, the city moved in its ordinary rhythms, indifferent to the specific weight of specific revelations and specific structures. Where is he now? She said. We believe he's in Houston. He was posted to Fort Sam Houston 8 weeks ago. Medical liaison role. 8 weeks. He had been 20 minutes from this hospital for 8 weeks. She had been 43 days in this building, and he had been 20 minutes away for 38 of them, and she had not known. And the coincidence of that, or the non-coincidence of it, landed in her chest with a dull precision that she did not have words for and was not looking for words for. I want to talk to him, she said. Maya, before you pick him up, before the formal process starts and lawyers appear and everything gets managed and documented and processed into something institutional, I want to talk to Riley Soames before any of that happens. Carver looked at her for a long moment. He was reading her the way she read people looking for the thing underneath the surface thing. What he was looking for, she suspected, was whether she was asking to talk to Soames because she wanted to understand or because she wanted something else, something that an operational person would categorize as a risk. She met his assessment with her eyes open. She had nothing to hide in this. Whatever she felt about Riley Soames and whatever she intended to say to him, neither of those things was dishonest. One conversation, Carver said. I'm in the room. I didn't ask to be alone with him. No, you didn't. He put his phone to his ear. Give me 20 minutes. She walked back toward the hospital while he made his calls. The night air was warm and slightly thick with the humidity that Houston carried even in the hours past midnight. She walked through it and felt the shoulder and thought about Riley Soames pulling two men out of a collapsed structure in Kandahar with his hands and his will and whatever particular thing it was that made certain people capable of extraordinary things in terrible circumstances. And then she thought about him sitting at a screen somewhere, receiving a name and confirming it and sending it forward toward armed men in civilian clothes who drove to hospitals and pressed guns against elderly men's temples. She thought about both of those things simultaneously and let them be simultaneously true, because that was what people were, the sum of every choice they had ever made, and some of those choices bore no relationship to each other except that the same person had made them. Inside, the ER had settled further towards something approaching function. Doctor. Reyes had come down from the surgical wing and was at the charge desk with the look of a woman who has done everything she can do for a patient and is now transitioning to everything else that needs doing. She saw Maya and crossed to her in 4 steps. He's stable, sleeping. He's going to be here for a week minimum, but barring infection and complication, he's going to be fine. Reyes looked at Maya's shoulder. You need imaging on that. I need 10 minutes first. I have been hearing that from you all night. I know. Give me 10 more. Reyes looked at her with the focused pragmatism of a trauma surgeon who has developed extensive practice at picking battles. 10, she said. Then you sit down and let me look at you properly. Not Dolores me. Deal. Dolores was with a patient in room 4. Maya could hear her voice through the partially closed door. The particular calm warmth that Dolores applied to patients who were frightened, the voice she used like a medication, measured and deliberate. Maya stopped outside the door for a moment and listened to it. It was a good voice for a hard job. It was the voice of someone who showed up and stayed. She moved on. Patel was at the desk still because, of course, he was the particular breed of person who stays at their post past the point of necessity because leaving feels like abandonment. He looked up when Maya stopped in front of him. You okay? He said. Getting there. She looked at him. You did well tonight. He blinked. It clearly had not occurred to him that this was a possibility, being told he had done well, and the receiving of it moved visibly across his face before he reassembled his composure. I just stayed on the phone. You held the room with 3 armed men while I was upstairs. That's not small. He looked at his desk. He looked back at her. Are you going to tell us what actually happened tonight, who you actually are? Maya considered this. She considered what she owed the people in this building who had stood in the middle of it with her and had not been given any context for what they were standing in the middle of. She thought about Dolores with the fire extinguisher and Patel on the phone and Dr. Reyes, who had never left her table. Not tonight, she said. But yes. He nodded slowly. Okay. He paused. The mouse thing, he said. The nickname. Dolores started it, but we all used it. I want you to know that was wrong. It wasn't wrong, Maya said. It was accurate. I worked to make it accurate. She almost smiled. I was just working on more than one thing at a time. She left him with that and went to find the woman named Solace, who had been the one watching the building, who had come in with a hand signal and no preamble, and who Maya had more questions for than she had had time to ask. She found her in the administrative anteroom near the south entrance, sitting in a chair with a tablet and the calm, productive focus of someone turning raw information into organized documentation. Solace looked up. She had sharp, dark eyes and the economical quality of someone who has never wasted a movement in their adult life. How's the shoulder? Passable. How long have you been running surveillance on this building? 62 days. 4 days longer than Maya had been inside it. She absorbed that. Harlan put you here before he put me here. He wanted overlapping coverage. He didn't tell me about you until 11 days ago. Solace lowered the tablet. He told me that if anything went active, you'd be the one handling the interior, and my job was to make sure you had what you needed from the outside. You said you'd been watching the building for 6 hours tonight. I said that. You'd been watching it for 62 days. Also true. Solace's expression held something that was almost humor. He trusted you a great deal. He wanted to make sure the environment was clean before he let the situation develop. He let this happen, Maya said. The operation tonight. He let it activate. Solus was quiet for a moment. He needed them to move. He needed them to commit resources and reveal personnel. The drive was always going to be the bait. He needed to know who would come for it. The realization arrived in Maya's chest with the particular quality of something she should have seen sooner. He knew they had someone inside this hospital. He let the admission go through the system so the flag would trigger. He wanted to identify the hospital leak. Dennis Craw, Solus said. Yes. He put himself in a trauma bay with 2 gunshot wounds to flush out an administrative contact. He also needed genuine medical intervention. The gunshot wounds were real, she paused. He's a complicated man. That seems to be a theme tonight. Maya looked at her steadily. Were you ever actually going to intervene from outside if I hadn't been here? Solis met her eyes, an honest pause. I had a very good plan, she said finally. It would have been significantly messier. Maya thought about the ER full of patients, about Mr. Okafor and Mrs. Abernathy, and the teenagers from the fender bender, about Patel alone at the desk with an unloaded gun. About what messier would have meant for all of them. She thought about Harland in his hospital bed stable now, who had decided that using a former Marine combat medic who had reinvented herself as a quiet hospital nurse was preferable to messier. He was not wrong. She could not argue with the outcome. She could be angry about the methodology, and she was a clean, specific anger that she knew how to carry without letting it run anything. And she was also underneath that aware that if she had not been here, if the mouse had not been in this particular corner of this particular building, the outcome would have been different in ways that she did not want to follow to their conclusions. Her phone buzzed. Carver. She read the text. Riley Soames was in a federal building 20 minutes from the hospital. He had been picked up at his apartment without incident. He was sitting in a room waiting. He had asked for a lawyer and then, when told who wanted to speak with him first, had said something that Carver's text relayed without commentary. He had said, "Tell her I'm sorry. Tell her I've been sorry for a long time." Maya stood in the administrative anteroom of Houston Metropolitan Trauma Center and read the message twice. Then she put her phone in her pocket and looked at Solus. "Tell Carver I'm ready," she said. And she went to find Dr. Reyes first because she had promised 10 minutes and she had used them. And because some promises you keep even on the nights when everything else is in motion, and also because she was a nurse and she understood better than most that you don't go into the next hard thing without taking care of the wound from the last one. She sat down. She let Reyes look at her shoulder properly. She did not rush it. Outside, the city kept its pace. Inside, the hospital breathed and worked and recovered around her alive in the particular way that places are alive when the people inside them have chosen in various ways to hold their ground. Dr. Reyes worked on her shoulder with the focused silence of someone who considers unnecessary conversation a form of inefficiency. Maya sat on the examination table in Bay 1 and let her, which was its own kind of discipline, the discipline of stillness, when everything in you wants to be moving. You have significant bruising developing around the entry track, Reyes said without looking up from her work. The muscle took more than the skin. You're going to feel this for 3 weeks. I've felt worse. I don't doubt that. Reyes tied off the last suture with a precise, economical motion and set down her instruments. She stripped her gloves and looked at Maya directly the way she looked at everything, without performance, without softness, just the clear-eyed attention of someone who has spent 16 years learning to see what is actually in front of her rather than what she expects to be there. Who are you, Maya? It was not an accusation. It was not even truly a question. It was the statement of a person who has processed sufficient data and arrived at a conclusion and is presenting that conclusion for confirmation. I'm a nurse, Maya said. You are a nurse, Reyes agreed. You are also something considerably more than that, and the people in this building who work beside you tonight have earned the right to know what that something is. Not all of it, but enough. She paused. I am not going to tell you what to do. I'm going to tell you that Dolores Pittman has been in this hospital for 19 years, and she held a fire extinguisher in a corridor for 40 minutes tonight because you told her to and she trusted you. She deserves to understand what she trusted. Maya looked at her hands. The right one, the one she had used twice tonight to remove weapons from people who had not expected to have them removed, was steady and unremarkable, the hand of a nurse at the end of a long shift. "I'll talk to her," Maya said, "when I get back." "Where are you going?" "To finish something." Reyes held her gaze for a moment longer. Then she stepped back, the professional acknowledgement that the medical portion of this interaction was complete and the rest of it was not hers to manage. "Antibiotics are on the counter. Take them. All of them, not just until you feel better." "I know how antibiotics work." "I know you do." Something shifted in Reyes's expression very briefly, something warmer and more complicated than her professional register usually permitted. "You saved this hospital tonight. I want you to know that I know that." Maya stood. The shoulder informed her of its opinion about standing. She noted it and stood anyway. "You saved Harland. That was the actual work." "We both did our jobs," Reyes said simply. "Go do the rest of yours." Carver was waiting near the south entrance with the particular patience of someone who has learned to wait without it costing them anything. He looked at her shoulder and then at her face and did not ask which was more damaged because he was smart enough to know the answer and considerate enough not to say it. They drove 20 minutes through a city that did not know what had happened inside one of its hospitals tonight, past lit windows and late traffic in the ordinary architecture of a place continuing its ordinary life. And Maya sat in the passenger seat and thought about Riley Soames. She thought about the first time she had seen him. Fort Bragg, a training exercise, 100-degree heat. A situation going sideways in the specific way that training situations go sideways when they're designed by people who want to find out what you do when sideways is all you have. Riley had been 3 positions to her left, and he had made a decision in under 4 seconds that was exactly the right decision, and had looked completely calm, making it not the performed calm of someone managing fear, but the genuine article, the calm of someone whose internal machinery ran quietly even under load. She had trusted him inside of a week. She had trusted him for 2.5 years after that. She thought about what Harlan had said. The operation tonight was verified by Soames. He confirmed Harlan's location. A man who had pulled 2 people from rubble in Kandahar had sat at a screen somewhere and typed a confirmation that sent armed men to a hospital. People are complicated, Carver had said. As a fact, yes, she thought, they are. The federal building was not dramatic. It was the kind of building that is designed to be forgettable, functional, and neutral, the physical expression of an institution that prefers not to be looked at directly. Carver took her through a side entrance down a corridor that smelled of industrial cleaning product and recycled air, and stopped outside a door that had a small window in it. "One thing before you go in," Carver said. "What's on that drive, the 17 names Soames' involvement, the network structure? Soames has not been told any of that has been recovered." Maya looked at him. "You want me to tell him? I want you to have a conversation that is real. I'm not going to script it. I'm not asking you to perform anything." He held her gaze. "But yes, he needs to understand the full weight of where he is tonight. You are probably the only person he'll hear it from without shutting down." She thought about that. She thought about whether it was right to use the trust someone had placed in you as a mechanism to reach them in a room where they were already caught and had no leverage. She thought about the hospital and the patients and Mr. Okafor's face above the gun barrel and the shot that had gone past her left ear on the 4th floor. She pushed the door open. Riley Soames was sitting at a table with his hands flat on the surface in front of him, the posture of someone who has decided that stillness is the only form of control available to them and is exercising it completely. He was 41, lean, with the kind of face that had always looked more thoughtful than the situation required the face of someone whose inner life ran deeper and busier than his surface suggested. He looked up when she came in. Whatever he had prepared for whatever internal architecture he had constructed between the moment of his arrest and this moment, it cracked slightly when he saw her, a fissure across the composed surface, real feeling leaking through it. "Maya," he said. "Riley." She sat down across from him. She did not perform anything. She was tired and her shoulder hurt, and she had been moving on adrenaline and training and necessity for several hours, and what was left when you stripped all of that away was just her sitting across from a man she had trusted, and was trying to understand. "You know everything," he said. It was not a question. "Not everything. Enough." He looked at his hands. The drive. It's in federal custody, all 17 names, the financial trails, the operational records. She watched his face. It's done, Riley. Whatever they built, it's done. He absorbed this without visible collapse, but she could see the internal work of it, the weight arriving and being held, the particular set of the jaw that she recognized from downrange, from moments when the information you receive is the worst available version of what you were hoping for. How much time were you in Houston? She said. 8 weeks. Did you know I was at that hospital? A pause that was its own answer. Yes. Who told you? The same people who told me everything. He looked up at her. I didn't tell them you were there. Maya, I need you to believe that. When I found out which hospital Harlan was in, I knew you were inside. And I didn't include that in my confirmation. She looked at him. She was reading him the way she read everyone, looking for the mechanisms of truth and the mechanisms of performance, and what she found was neither the clean innocence she had half hoped for, nor the clean guilt she had prepared herself for, but something more difficult and more human than either. Why did you do it? She said. Not how it started, not what they told you it was. Why did you keep doing it? He was quiet for a long moment. The ventilation moved air through the room. Somewhere beyond the door, the building continued its functional life. After Kandahar, he said, after the last deployment, I came back and things were, he stopped, started again differently. I came back and the people we worked for were making decisions that I couldn't reconcile with what we had done over there, what it had crowded to us. I started believing that there was a better architecture, that the intelligence systems we operated inside were corrupt in ways that required disruption from outside. He looked at her. It was ideology, Maya. I genuinely believed it. For about 18 months, I genuinely believed that what I was doing was corrective. And then the man in the traffic accident, he said, and then I understood what I had actually been feeding into. You kept doing it. I was in it. Getting out of something like that doesn't work the way walking out of a room works. He pressed his hands flat on the table. That's not an excuse. I know that's not an excuse. I kept doing it because I was afraid, and because I had already done it, and because the math of stopping felt impossible. He looked at her with eyes that were doing the specific work of honesty, the hard work, the kind that costs something. I have thought about you specifically, what I was risking for the people who might be in your building. I thought about it and kept going anyway. That's the part I can't make clean. Maya sat with that. She let it be exactly what it was, which was a person she had trusted, telling her the true shape of what they had done and why, and the true shape being neither monstrous nor acceptable, but the irregular and painful shape of an actual human failure. You said you were sorry, she said, in the message you sent through Carver. I've been sorry for a long time. Sorry doesn't... He stopped. I know what sorry does and doesn't do. Yes. She looked at him steadily. 7 men came into my hospital tonight. One of them put a gun to an 81-year-old man's head. One of them fired in a hallway with patients on every floor. You verified the location that sent them there. He did not look away. I know. 3 of my colleagues held positions tonight that they were not trained for and had not agreed to hold. A nurse named Dolores stood alone in a corridor with a fire extinguisher for 40 minutes. A 26-year-old intake coordinator held 3 armed men with an unloaded gun and a phone. She held his eyes. They did that because they trusted me. And I was there because Harlan trusted me. And the night activated because you confirmed his location. Yes, he said. His voice was very quiet and very clear. I'm not going to tell you what happens to you next. That's not mine to say. But I'm going to tell you what I know, which is that you have a decision in front of you that is real. Everything you know about that network, every name above yours, every mechanism you were part of, every communication pathway, all of it. You give all of it completely and without condition. And the 17 people on that drive who are still operational, who are still inside the systems they've been feeding from, have a chance of being stopped before more people with guns go into more hospitals. She paused. That's the only corrective action available to you now. It's not enough. I want you to know I understand it's not enough, but it's real and it's in front of you and it's what you do next. Riley Soames looked at her across the table for a long moment. She could see the full complexity of him in that moment, the man who had made extraordinary decisions in terrible circumstances, and the man who had sat at a screen and typed a confirmation, and the man who had spent 18 months inside an ideology, and the man who had been afraid. All of those men simultaneously present in the face of someone she had known and trusted, and was sitting across from in a federal room at 2 a.m. "I'll give them everything," he said. "I know you will," she said. And she meant it, not as absolution, as a simple, accurate statement about what she believed he would do. She stood. He looked up at her with the expression of someone who wants to say more than the situation has room for and knows it. "Take care of yourself, Riley," she said. She walked out. Carver was in the corridor with her. He had been listening through whatever mechanism these rooms were equipped with, and his expression held the carefully maintained neutrality of someone who has just witnessed something that has affected him and is choosing not to display it prominently. "He'll cooperate," Maya said. "I heard. The 17 on the drive plus whatever he gives you from above his tier. That should be enough to dismantle the network's operational structure." "It should." He looked at her. "Thank you. Don't thank me. Get him proper counsel and a real protection arrangement. He'll need both." She looked at the closed door. "He's not a good man who made one bad choice. But he's also not what those 7 men who came into my hospital tonight are. He knows the difference. Use that." Carver nodded slowly. He had the look of a man revising something, some internal calculation about who he was dealing with and what they were capable of, not just operationally, but in the fuller sense. "Lioness," he started. "Maya," she said. "Just Maya." "Maya." He said it with the deliberate respect of someone trying out a new word and finding it fits. "The military has been trying to locate a path back to you for 4 years. Harland is not the only one who has wanted you operational again. There are roles that would—" "No." He did not look surprised. "You're certain?" "I was certain 4 years ago. Tonight hasn't changed that. Tonight confirmed it." She looked at him directly. "I know what I am. I know what I can do. I used it tonight because it was necessary and the people in that building needed it. But I'm a Nurse Carver. That's not a cover. That's not a reduced version of something larger. It's the thing I chose. People are sick and scared and alone in hospitals every single day, and the work of staying beside them through that is real work. It matters. I'm not leaving it." Carver looked at her for a long moment, and then he did something she had not expected. He nodded. Not the nod of someone conceding a point in a negotiation. The nod of someone who genuinely understands and genuinely respects what they're hearing. "Then I will need your statement on tonight's events for the official record," he said. "After that, your involvement is documented as that of a hospital employee responding to an active threat situation. Nothing more unless you choose otherwise." "Understood. And if we need a civilian consultation at some future point—" "You have my number," she said. "I'm not hiding. I never was." She walked back through the building and out into the warm Houston night and sat in the car while Carver arranged a driver, and for the first time since the ambulance doors blew open, she let herself be completely still, not the operational stillness of someone managing a situation, but the genuine stillness of someone whose body has declared the emergency concluded and is now presenting the bill. Her shoulder ached deeply and her feet were tired, and she was hungry, in the way that you get hungry when adrenaline has consumed everything available and there is nothing left to run on. She thought about the small apartment 15 minutes from the hospital, with the plant she had not watered in 2 days and the half-finished paperback on the nightstand. She thought about her shift starting in 9 hours and whether she would be there for it. She would be there for it. She got back to the hospital at 3:40 in the morning. The ER had completed its transition from crisis to recovery, the particular organized quiet of a place that has been through something and is processing it steadily. 2 police officers remained at the entrance. The federal personnel had largely cleared out. The patients who could be discharged had been, and the ones who could not were in rooms being looked after by people who had chosen this work for exactly this reason. Dolores was at the charge desk. She looked up when Maya came through the door, and something in her expression moved through several things and settled on something steady and unresolved, the look of a person who has questions that are real and will require real answers. Maya walked to the desk and stood across from her and said, "I owe you an explanation." "You owe me several," Dolores said, "but I'll start with one." My name is Maya Van Serene. I'm a nurse. Before that, I was a Marine Corps combat medic. I served for 9 years, 4 deployments. I left 4 years ago because I was done, genuinely done, not temporarily done, and I built this life because it was the life I wanted. She held Dolores's eyes. The man who came in tonight on the Gurney Harlan knew who I was and arranged for me to be at this hospital because he anticipated he might need someone he trusted in a place he might need to reach. I did not know that was why I was here. I did not know any of tonight was coming. Dolores was quiet. The charge desk hummed with its quiet electronic life between them. The things I did tonight, Maya said. The maintenance shaft, the disarm, the 4th floor. That's who I was before this. I don't carry it around with me as a label or an identity. I don't introduce myself with it. But it's part of me, and it was available tonight, and I used it because the people in this building needed it. She paused. You deserve to know that from the beginning. I'm sorry you're learning it this way. Dolores was quiet for another moment. She was looking at Maya with the full attention of a woman who has been at this work long enough to know the difference between a person performing honesty and a person actually being honest. Then she said, the fire extinguisher. Yes. You sent me to that corridor knowing I might encounter armed people. I sent you to that corridor knowing you were the most capable person available to me in that moment and knowing what I needed done there. I did not send you to engage anyone. I sent you to hold a position and protect patients. Maya held her gaze. If I had believed the risk was greater than your capability, I would have found another way. Another silence. Longer. The mouse, Dolores said finally. The mouse, Maya agreed. Something shifted in Dolores's face. It was not a smile exactly. It was the expression of someone who has received information that retroactively reframes 43 days of small observations and is experiencing that reframing in real time. Day 7, she said slowly. You came in early and you were gone for about 20 minutes, and when you came back, your knees were dusty and I thought you had been in the supply closet. Maintenance shaft, Maya said. Maintenance shaft. Dolores said the words like she was testing their weight. Day 11, you stood outside the east stairwell for 30 seconds, staring at the camera mount. Checking the angle. Of course you were. Dolores put both hands flat on the desk. She took a breath. Every shift you were early, you stayed late. You never missed a patient follow-up. You learned everyone's name in the first week. You held Mr. Okafor's discharge paperwork open 3 times because you said something felt off about his vitals, and you were right all 3 times. She looked at Maya. I called you a mouse. It was accurate. It was spectacularly inaccurate, and I am a perceptive woman who should have known better. Dolores's voice had the particular quality of someone correcting a record they care about getting right. You were the most present person in this building. You just didn't make noise about it. Maya stood across the desk from a woman who had worked hard in a hard place for 19 years and had stood alone in a corridor with a fire extinguisher because she trusted something she could not quite name in a person she thought she understood and had not yet understood at all. I'm glad I was here, Maya said, tonight and every other night. Dolores looked at her for a long moment. Then she said in the voice she used for things that mattered and didn't need to be large to matter, me too. Patel came around the corner with a cup of coffee held out like an offering. He had clearly been listening from approximately 4 feet away and had decided coffee was the correct response to everything he had heard. I made the real stuff, he said. The good pot. I figured it was warranted. Maya took the cup. It was warm and strong and real. She drank it standing at the charge desk between Dolores and Patel, and the ER moved quietly around them, monitors and footsteps, and the low voices of care being provided in the ordinary, extraordinary way it was provided every night in every hospital in every city by people who showed up and stayed. At 6:15 in the morning, Carver sent a brief message. Soames had provided 7 hours of comprehensive testimony covering the full operational structure of the network. The 17 names on the drive had been cross-referenced and confirmed. Federal arrest warrants were being prepared in 4 jurisdictions simultaneously. The network's communication infrastructure was being targeted for shutdown within the next 12 hours. It was by every operative measure done. Maya read the message at the charge desk and put her phone back in her pocket. At 6:45, she went up to check on Victor Harland. He was awake. He looked smaller and older in the morning light than he had in the urgency of the night, the natural diminishment of a man who has been through a great deal and is resting in the aftermath of it. But his eyes were the same, sharp and gray, and carrying that particular quality of someone who has been in the long game so long that even lying in a hospital bed, they are still playing it on some level. He looked at her when she came in and said nothing for a moment. Just looked. Soames talked, she said. I know. Carver called. He watched her face. How are you? I'm a nurse at the end of a long shift. Maya. I'm real, she said. I'm tired and my shoulder hurts, and I have patients to check on and a plant I haven't watered in 2 days. That's how I am. He was quiet. I used you, he said. I need to say that plainly. I placed you in that hospital knowing there was a possibility this would happen. I made a decision about your life without asking you. Yes. I'm not going to apologize for the outcome. What was on that drive, what Soames has given them, now it's worth what tonight cost. But I am going to tell you that I am sorry for how I did it. She looked at him in the plain morning light. A complicated man who had done a complicated thing for reasons that were real and had cost people something real, including himself. She thought about Reyes saying we both did our jobs. She thought about the distinction between the apology that makes the person giving it feel better and the one that acknowledges what actually happened without asking forgiveness for it. He was doing the second kind. She gave him credit for that. Rest, she said. Let Dr. Reyes do her work. You're going to be here a week. Maya. He stopped her before she reached the door. The military wants you back. Carver told me he made the offer. He did. And she turned. She looked at Victor Harland in his hospital bed with his IV line and his gray eyes and the 2 gunshot wounds that Anita Reyes had closed with 16 years of skill and the particular stubbornness of a surgeon who refuses to lose. I'm already doing the work, she said. I've been doing it for 43 days. I'll be doing it tomorrow. She went back to the floor. The morning shift was coming in. She gave her handoff reports clearly and completely patient by patient status. By status, the ordinary language of care transferring between people who understood its weight. When she was done, she gathered her things from the locker room and put on her jacket carefully over her bandaged shoulder and walked out through the ER one more time. Dolores was at the charge desk. She looked up. She did not say anything. She gave Maya a single nod, the kind that contains a great deal more than its size suggests. Maya nodded back. She walked out into the Houston morning, into the early light that was just beginning to change the color of the air. And the city was waking up around her in its ordinary way. Cars and voices and the smell of someone's coffee from a window somewhere. And she walked through it toward home, toward the unwatered plant and the unfinished paperback and 8 hours of sleep that she had earned in every sense of the word. She was Maya Van Saren. She was a nurse. She was exactly where she had chosen to be for exactly the reasons she had chosen to be there. And not one thing that had happened in the last 8 hours had changed that. Some people carry their past like a weight. Maya carried hers like what it actually was: experience, knowledge, capability, the accumulated truth of everything she had survived and learned and chosen, present in her hands and her eyes in the voice that came out level and absolute, when level and absolute was what the moment required. She had been the quietest person in the room for 43 days. She would be the quietest person in the room tomorrow. And if the room ever needed more than quiet again, she would be that too, without hesitation, without performance, without apology, because that was who she was, all of it together. The mouse and the Marine and the medic and the nurse, one person whole, and decided standing in the morning light of a city that did not know her name and did not need to. The work was enough. The work had always been enough. And she walked home.